All right, hey, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, we are back taking a look at the tropics. Tonight is Friday, September 3rd, 2021. This is your evening tropical update. Well, tonight we are still tracking Hurricane Larry, now a Category 2 hurricane in the central Atlantic, expected to become a major hurricane this weekend as it begins to lift northward of the Caribbean and should be a powerful hurricane passing by the East Coast next week. Still hoping for the offshore turn, and it still looks like that's going to happen. And then we also have Invest 91L, our Caribbean wave we've talked about some, that is going to move into the Gulf of Mexico, where some development is still possible next week. So, I'm not going to spend a ton of time tonight. We're just going to go over the latest. Again, Hurricane Center map showing our friend here 30% chance by next week, and then Larry doing his thing down here. And we'll start with Larry, National Hurricane Center, 5 p.m. advisory. Maximum sustained winds now 100 miles an hour. That probably goes up to like 110 or so, maybe 115 by the evening advisory. Larry does appear to be strengthening tonight on satellite imagery, and that movement to the west-northwest at 16 miles an hour. Next complete advisory about 2 hours after this is being recorded. But definitely going to be a major hurricane. And again, Saturday expected to be at least 115 miles an hour, which is a start of Category 3. Satellite presentation of Larry has markedly improved throughout the day. The loop is kind of jumping around a little bit, so we'll just back it up and do it by hand. And we see here earlier this morning, the system was struggling around lunchtime. It didn't even have an open eye at all. It had just completed an eye wall replacement cycle. That's what we call, when the system has a small inner eye, and then those bands wrap in, and the hurricane tries to force those bands inward, and eventually it becomes too great of a the physics become too great to overcome. Essentially, the inner eye wall drops out and a new larger eye wall takes over. Hurricanes and Larry's sort of predicament right here, where he's over decently warm water, but not like boiling hot water, not enough for like super rapid intensification in this region, and with the dry air around them, do tend to do these eye wall replacements more frequently. And this is why we see hurricanes really in this part of the world become large. We see some of the biggest hurricanes like your Floyds and Irmas and Isabels and stuff. You have some big hurricanes that come through here, and this is because of the environmental setup is often what triggers these eye wall replacements over and over. And they just become big hurricanes is what they do, and that's what those eye wall replacement cycles do. That's what Katrina infamously did. That went from 175-mile-an-hour hurricane with a really small but hyper violent core, which is kind of like what Ida was, and then Katrina instead did an eye wall replacement at the last minute, and then the maximum sustained winds sort of pushed out from the center, and that's why the storm generated so much more surge and pushed her punishment over such a wider area, whereas storms like Ida, were still very intense at the core. It never did that. An example, that's a good example of that. So that's kind of what we're watching with Larry's. How many more of these does it go? Does it become a fully annular hurricane near north of the Antilles? That's something else we'll see. Annular hurricanes, say like Isabel, for example, in 2003, it's a good satellite shot, become these big truck tire shaped systems where they become very stable, and they can fight off their environment a lot better. But they don't really have those spiral bands this is Michael, another Category 5 hurricane, when it was making landfall in 2018, all these spiral bands, moving out of the storm and rotating around the storm. These are all rotating in this direction, where, Isabel doesn't even have those, just a big stable hurricane. So that's what we're going to watch for. Some of the things we're looking for, too, is the environment of Larry. Again, mid-level dry air, still a problem for the storm. You can see this general darker band around the hurricane. It's not enough to really get in there and really, really mess with the storm anymore. It's finally mixed that dry air out, but it's something we're still watching. But otherwise, the environment is quite good for Larry. This is by Sunday. It's still under the influence of this large upper high over the system, definitely helping it out. Now, by next week, we're going to see some more wind shear impart on the storm. Could have a bit more of an issue, but how much of that wind shear actually imparts on Larry and how much of Larry is able to kind of push that off remains to be seen. Again, that dry air is still surrounding the storm, and into Sunday and into Monday, you can see how deep tropical moisture still wraps around Larry, but then this dry air is lurking around the edges. And again, a lot of times when you see these annular type hurricanes, we'll see that effect. Water temperatures are expected to go up though in Larry's future, not a ton, but the oceanic heat content is going to rise. This is going to allow again Larry to intensify. And now that he's completed these eyeball replacements and is looking a little bit better, we're probably going to see like one more. But go to the end of the forecast loop on this, or the satellite loop here. You can see eye has popped out in the evening satellite presentation, and much deeper, darker cloud tops surrounding that eye indicating that Larry looks a lot healthier and this thing's probably off to the races through the weekend. So track, okay, track's probably the more important thing though, right? Where the hell is Larry going? Well, no major changes to the evening forecast track for the Hurricane Center for the next 5 days. That this turn is very well forecast. It is an excellent agreement with all of our computer models that it is going to turn before the Antilles. It's not going to take any super major deviations in the short term. Now, the small micromanages are still important. Again, we're talking about a storm that's not going to be passing by the U.S. coast until the middle of next week. So we're still like 5-6 days out. And the real question is going to be how much of this ridge guiding Larry along hangs on. So what's happening right now? We got to Friday here is or Saturday morning is a strong high pressure ridge is guiding this thing to the west south, west northwest. Okay, it's rotating around the clockwise flow of this high pressure. This high rotates in that direction. Okay, through the weekend, this high is going to begin to break down. This trough moving over the east coast is going to kind of weaken, erode the edge of this ridge, and the ridge kind of retrograde, kind of pushes off to the right, and it does weaken some. Now, some of the ridge influence still sticks out through Sunday, but likely what's going to happen again into Monday is this ridge turns. On the GFS forecasts a pretty weak ridge, and it allows Larry to definitely start turning north a little bit early. This is why a lot of GFS ensembles miss Bermuda to the right, whereas the European sees a bit stronger ridge. So this is kind of like where the GFS sees the ridge as being the weakest, which is early Monday. Compare this with the European model, which still sees a pretty strong ridge holding on. And the stronger this ridge, the more Larry wants to push off to the west. This is why Bermuda has significant concern this evening, because if this ridge holds on a bit more than expected, then Larry may have to come a bit further west, and the more west it comes, the more it can influence Bermuda. Now, we are still expecting a large trough over the eastern U.S. to develop by the middle of next week. So this is Thursday, and a large trough is going to dip down, catch Larry, and turn him out to sea. That part of the track has not really changed, but Larry's trajectory getting to this point where the trough begins to pick it up matters. Does it turn before Bermuda? Does it turn at Bermuda? Does it even come a little bit east or west of Bermuda and then turn? Because not only does that have an impact on what Bermuda gets, and while the U.S. is probably safe thanks to this trough, you still have the issue of how much Bermuda gets. Because again, Larry's gonna be a powerful hurricane by this point, and significant direct impacts to Bermuda are likely. But then later on in the forecast ensemble, show this later on towards the end of the forecast. You have Nova Scotia and Newfoundland. How much do they get? GFS buys at earlier turns, so the GFS further offshore, where the European still brings a lot of significant weather impacts to this region. And this could still be a Category 2 or 3 hurricane, and going to be becoming extratropical, and it could be a very powerful storm to hit this region. One of not many that they get up this far north, but it definitely could be a possibility. So we're going to keep a close watch on this. Again, right now the U.S. appears to be pretty safe, but Bermuda and Atlantic Canada need to watch, and of course, we'll keep watching in case anything big changes, but probably not going to see that as long as that trough continues to show up on time on our models. All right, other issue, not Invest 91L. Hurricane Center gives us a 30% chance of development tonight. It is a, tropical wave that's kind of buried itself in the Central America and the Yucatan. No big problem right now. But next week, it appears is going to get into the Gulf of Mexico, and your environmental factors could become marginally favorable for some development Tuesday or Wednesday. And actually, again, about a 30% shot. You can see a broad rotation here on the satellite over the edge of Central America and Mexico, but generally speaking, no major development, and this is over land mostly, so no big problem. Low-level winds still kind of kinking around this ridge as trough axis, which is now something like this, and this is all going to generally wander into the Gulf of Mexico early next week. So GFS kind of eventually does develop this a little bit. It shows this through the weekend, not doing a whole lot, but then by early next week, you got this kind of broad circulation over the Gulf of Mexico, some tropical moisture associated with that, and the GFS in this model actually pulls something more northward towards Florida. Strong cold front approaching here, and the GFS sees this front strong enough to pick up this low, turn it, and you could have a weak tropical storm or tropical depression moving into the Florida Panhandle and the Big Bend next week. That's just one possibility. Another possibility is this front isn't very strong. Maybe the front stays washed out over the Carolinas, and if the front washes out, this will coax the system to probably turn back towards the west, and it could impact Texas or Louisiana. High pressure is going to protect the Gulf Coast through the weekend. This is what we talked about as far as the timing goes. And I told y'all last week or earlier in the week, I said, if the high holds on, you got nothing to worry about. This just gets buried into Central America and Mexico. It's no problem. Well, this high that protects the Gulf Coast through the weekend begins to break down by Sunday into Monday. And by Monday of next week, you've got some troughing over, the mid-Atlantic region, but not enough. And you've got a general weakness here in the mid-levels over Florida and the rest of the Gulf Coast, and this allows this thing to potentially come north. Now, again, the GFS takes us over this way. It could just as easily kind of wander off, and the European ensemble shows this pretty well. The European shows a range of outcomes where weaker low pressure, but still, probably tropical storm strength at least, showing potential landfalls anywhere from western Texas all the way over to Florida. I mean, it really is a vast outcome. And this, the future track, whether it's right or left, mostly depends on that front coming in. If the front's strong, it probably drags whatever's down here off with it. If the front's a little weaker, then it may be able to sneak back behind it and come up on the back side of it. So the whole Gulf Coast needs to be keeping an eye on this. GFS doesn't buy it as much, but again, there's a couple GFS members we do see taking off to the northeast. It does look like significant upper level winds are going to be present. This is valid on Wednesday next week, a large upper trough over the region. So probably not going to see like a major hurricane or anything, but you could still have a messy tropical storm, and those can bring a lot of rainfall and be nasty in their own right. So we're going to keep a close eye on it. But bottom line tonight, not much to worry about yet, but we're going to keep an eye on it. And again, Larry, sort of same thing. Nothing to worry about right now, but need to watch him as he makes his turn next week. See if he impacts Bermuda, see if he impacts Atlantic Canada. And if it gets a little closer than we expect, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But right now, indications are that's not going to happen. Other than that, guys, it is mostly quiet. A lot more of a chaotic pattern over the Western Atlantic. Not seeing a whole lot of other activity. We have some more stuff coming off of Africa, but not a problem right now. But as we go in the middle and late September, it's probably going to be a marathon. We're probably not going to get a lot of breaks. It's probably going to be pretty nonstop. It looks like the MJO is going to stay in a phase where we have more activity, and it looks like the middle of the month you're going to have a much stronger ridge building after Larry sneaks out. You're going to have a much stronger ridge of high pressure, and that's probably going to force a lot of stuff southward into the Caribbean and stuff, and that means U.S. impacts possible middle to late of September. So I got for you guys this evening on your tropical update. As always, thanks for watching. Have a good one.